I saw a video the other day. I forget whose platform and who the guest was. But yeah, it was the typical thing. The catchy title was "Civil War is Inevitable." And the basic thesis was that because of immigrants and diversity and all the messiness of the world, the global modern world and so on, people just get upset and angry and they don't know who they are anymore. And, you know, they don't have places to live and jobs and whatnot. And so eventually they get angry. And then, you know, there's this split, polarization, and then people have to fight. There's nothing structural in that argument. And, you try to think like, well, what are we talking about? Civil War, where, when? What were the causes of the American Civil War and whatnot? And parsing the difference between a revolution and a civil war. But it's all just this reactionary dog whistling, I don't like immigrants, and so on. Anyway, it's so historically bereft of any real reference. Like the Chega party here in Portugal, their platform, which is vacuous, is something like country, work, and God, or whatever. So it's basically Salazar all over again, typical BS, and it doesn't address anything real. The idea, I think, for these people is there has to be an entrenched hierarchy, and that hierarchy is natural. Somehow. It's just like built into the fabric of the universe, like, a quantum gravity or something. The Planck scale, I don't know. But anyhow, it's built in, and that's just the way it is, and so on. And you get these typical kind of think tanky ideas. They're not really ideas, they masquerade as ideas because they are vacuous as hell. And, if you look at history, everything's immigration. You're in and out of Africa, migration in and out of Africa for ever and ever. And we interbred with Neanderthals and probably other hominids, over time. Evidence either remains and is accessible or it's not. And we have evidence in our genome now. It's very accessible about these things. And, the Norman conquest, the Vikings going to Ireland, what happened to the pure Druid culture? Are Irish people really Irish? How far back are you going to go in the genetic record, paleontology or whatever, archaeology, to prove the one true Scotsman or the one true Irishman and what they're made of and what they should be? And when were those borders drawn? And what does that have to do with anything? There's just so many elements to this kind of thinking that's just shallow. It doesn't take into account anything. And they have this seemingly intelligent conversation. They can speak well. They can articulate the logic of their stance. So people will say, oh yeah, that makes sense. And they'll ignore all the other lines of evidence that contradict these ideas. And the other thing that bugs me is, why are people in various countries around the world motivated to hire migrant workers? Your Uber driver is from India or Pakistan via Ukraine, Poland, and finally winding up working in the fields in Portugal, and then being able to get a residency and become an Uber driver. Why did people hire him? Where are all the young Portuguese kids? You know, they're off trying to make a higher salary somewhere else in Europe or the world. And they're not going to pick the pears. I've said this many times. The kind of evil that the United States engages in, and everybody's responsible for it to some degree because we allow it to happen. All the politicians sending inmates to El Salvador where they're tortured. You know, just grabbing people off the street and sending them to the gulag somewhere. Outsourcing it to another country in pure globalist fashion, you know. It's disgusting. And the damage it does to people is grotesque. And all this kind of thing, you know, it's like, why are they going to America? You know, you want to send the message, don't come here. Okay, what do you have to do to make people so desperate for work that they want to pick lettuce in the Central Valley of California or something? And at the same time, you're saying you're giving people a pathway through the gig economy and AI and whatnot to a bigger, brighter future. It's all a scam. And the reactionaries just want that hierarchy. They want that patriarchal hierarchy, and they want to slap a label on it, Western civilization and Christianity of some stripe. You know, eventually the sectarian conflict leads to one. There can be only one Christianity. And for thousands of years, sectarian violence has been around. Thousands of years, hundreds of years war, 30 years war, whatever. You know, it's sad. There's so much good information out there and so many good tools for gathering good information. And one can always read books. If you haven't done the reading, you don't know anything. And then people tune into these folks with these simplistic arguments that sound about right to a certain person's ear. And, you know, they think they've figured it all out. The other thing is everybody wants to have this absolute knowledge, you know. I'm right, you're wrong type of thing. And that's never going to happen. Anyway, that really bugged me. I'm going to have to do something to talk about that just because I want to work it out, state it clearly what bothers me about it. And I've talked about it a lot with friends, and it's sad. We can't move on, you know, because it's going to have to be an all hands on deck, you know, global effort across cultures if we're going to solve the meta crisis or the poly crisis or any of the major problems that we have. And some of them can't be solved, like you're not going to clean up PFAS. You're not going to get rid of microplastics. Maybe you can come up with some algae or something that eats it. And maybe that will help, but in general, you're not going to figure this stuff out. And if you need time to do it. And we're just accelerating towards disaster. We're not going to have the time. Anyway, I'll stop here. Cafes are so inexpensive here in the countryside. Really delicious cheese and bread. A few euros. Another thing I wanted to say about that reactionary, simplistic populace, if you want to go there, think tanky, conservative argument about all you do is get rid of migrants and immigrants and everything reverts to the cultural mean, and you have one true Scotsman or you have pure blood Irishmen. Look at history. I mean, there have been, whether you want to call it civil wars or not, throughout history, thousands of years of it, you know. 30 Years' War, 100 Years' War. You've got the samurai at each other's throats for hundreds of years. That's a very homogeneous culture, and if you want to use the word race of people, Japanese people are pretty genetically, you know, homogeneous. There hadn't been invasions from the mainland for a long time, so um, they qualify as kind of a isolated, homogeneous race of people, culture, whatever, and yet they fight, and they call it culture. You know, one samurai gang leader over another one, fighting over land and resources and power. And this happens all over the place, but you're not going to. Um, I just feel sad that you have people putting forth these think tanky, shallow explanations of things without looking at all the other lines of evidence that are of crucial import to the discussion. And if you have a conversation with people who believe that stuff, you have to take them through so many different perspectives of things. And if you're not well read, as erudite as someone like Jim Rutt, for example, with his minimal viable metaphysics that I just did some research on, which it's very interesting and very clean. It's a good structure. It's a good lattice work for thinking about reality and for giving us space to continue to explore without resort to solipsism or things like that. But anyway, if people haven't read a lot, then they're unfamiliar with various domains of thinking, and everything gets whittled down to these simplistic perspectives, worldviews. Here we have a Shega party that's its platform is something like God, country, and work, which is very Salazar. It's like regret going back to Salazar, and somehow that's going to solve 21st century issues with the meta crisis or the poly crisis or whatever else we're up against. And all you have to do is get rid of the immigrants and work hard and all this kind of stuff. It's nonsense, and it's sad that in a world where there's so much good information and it's so accessible, we still buy that stuff. But it's going to take time to get everybody up to speed on how things work and to instill within people, within cultures, the kind of curiosity that's interested in reality, in principles, in laws, in ways of understanding things, lines of evidence, different domains and how they see things and whatnot. So I was talking for a long time about this, and for some reason the camera wasn't working, so maybe I recorded this. I'll just stop because I'm trying to cover what I said before when the camera was off, and it's not working for me. So anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. Enjoy. Bom Natal, Boas Festas. Guilherme T. Out.